So, welcome, Mark. For our final talk during this session, I'm going to be speaking with Mark van den Brink about his book, The Minox Files, published by Van Zutendal. So, before we dive into the subject of the book, just a few words about Mark himself. Is a photographer. Mark is a photographer from the Netherlands, who studied at the Rietveld Academy, and shortly, even I believe back as a student, began using this very particular camera, which developed into a project spanning many decades, and that has over time constituted a huge archive of images. So, in a sense, my first question is, very obvious. The book is called The Minox Files. What is a Minox camera?
Hello. So, a Minox camera is a small spy camera, you could say. It's sort of... I'm not sure if they invented as it should be a spy camera, but it's also maybe a sort of gadget. I've got one with me, by the way. So this is the.
So this is what the Minox looks like.
Yeah, that's it. It's really handy. It's really sensitive to take pictures with. It's easy to handle. Actually, there are quite a few options on there. It's also, you can use it really as a good camera. It is a good camera. So, but the negatives are so small. It's like 8 by 11 millimeters. So that's like this. And it gives a beautiful result, I think.
And so, when I was reading up on your biography, and I read that you had first presented a project using a Minox camera when you were at the Rietveld Academy, I wondered to myself, if you were a student in such a prestigious art school and you did a project with this camera, what would people's reaction be? What was it that drew you to this device in the first place when you were first experimenting with it?
Well, actually, I never thought about a project using this camera. It's more started like a sort of notebook or diary. So it was a sort of project on the side. As it grew on, I fell in love with the images. But also during my graduation, I had other series hanging on the wall, and this is sort of was on the side. It was that Willem van Zutendal said, "Hey, Mark, you have those small Minox prints, show them. They are beautiful." And at my graduation, in the end, they look like even better than the sort of official stuff I had hanging. So that was sort of the start of it. Yeah.
And since then, so in the mid-'80s, you have continued to use this camera regularly.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that you've built up an archive of some maybe more than 15,000 images.
Yeah.
And my understanding is also that this is the first time that you've made a book from this archive. So there are many pictures in the book, but starting from 15,000 images must be a huge sort of challenge. So how did you start this process of using that huge archive and turning it into this book that we have here?
Yeah. Well, when Willem van Zutendal asked me to make a book, it was his idea to not only look at the images I selected, but look at all the stuff, everything I made. So we went back to the contact sheets and made that sort of journey again. Through all the films, And we discovered also quite a few images which I never printed or overlooked. And that is also because you look at an older archive, you look with sort of different eyes to it. And so our first selection or our first edit was like, I think 600 images. I had this fantasy to make a book with like, let's say 1,000 images. But okay, that's too much. I mean, you get bored. So we had to reduce it. And I think, Willem did such a great job doing that. And I think it's really important to trust your editor to make a selection and go through all your work instead of you are doing a sort of pre-selection. And that is the way he works also. I mean, as a photographer, you are so sort of too close to your images. So if you can let that go and let your designer do the editing, I think you get the best results. If he speaks the same language as you, of course. I mean, I think that's a important thing in the trust. So.
But you mentioned, it sounds like you have known each other since you were a student.
Yeah.
So was he teaching at that time, or?
Yeah. So that was, of course, we know a lot of time, and actually during the Corona period, I started thinking, hey, maybe I should throw some stuff on Instagram. And that was the moment he picked it up. And he saw this, he did know it worked, but he saw it again and he thought, wow, this is so good, we're going to make a book of it. So it's great, yeah.
Can I share the book with you?
Yeah, sure, go.
I mean, the other question I wanted to ask you is, looking at these images, there's all different kinds of images in this book and in the archive.
Yeah.
There are images that feel personal. There are images that feel sort of very ethereal, maybe not almost real. There are very mundane images.
Mm-hmm.
And the book doesn't have a narrative. This doesn't seem to be, at least, trying to tell a very specific story.
Right.
I'm curious to know, you had this huge group of images and also many different types of image.
Right.
Was there some kind of criteria or idea that you had in mind for what you wanted to bring together in the book?
I don't know really. I mean, it's sort of,
a more
I know that
instinctive.
it feels like it's sort of going everywhere. But still there is this sort of line, and it's through all my work there. So, it started really as a diary. So I had this camera with me all the time. But later I tried to had a little bit more focus, doing projects. So I went to the Alps, for example. Went to Paris a few times for projects, New York. So there is a sort of structure in there, the chapters are divided in the Alps, Paris, New York, etc. But I don't know, the line through the pictures. A journalist wrote, it's something to do with intimacy and distance. The line between those poles. And I think that is the sort of line in my work, you could say.
And
it feels really random, but still.
Yeah, I think that's true. It does have, there is a feeling of randomness, but there's also a feeling of coherence at the same time, which I find really interesting, is that you're not quite sure what brings all of these images together, but somehow they all do seem to belong to something coherent. I guess another question that I have about this is in terms of your process of taking the pictures. I mean, this is obviously, I read somewhere that you called the Minox a smartphone avant la lettre.
Yeah.
So, you actually have found a camera that's smaller than a smartphone, which is quite impressive.
Yeah.
But is this something that you have on you at all times, and you take pictures whenever they come to you, or is it a more kind of specific process in terms of taking the pictures?
No, it's the first thing you said. I mean, at least so I started. You know, as you have your phone today, I started out with having this small camera in my pocket all the time. And each time I saw something happening, I thought, hey, that's nice for a picture. And it also, maybe it's also to do with the sort of, how do you call it now, FOMO feeling, so fear of missing out. Yeah. So I carried, before the Minox, I carried a big camera. But yeah, it's way too much to carry that around all the time. So I found this small camera. I saw it on a film from Robert Altman, Prêt-à-porter. Okay. So I thought, whoa, that is a cool camera, so small. And then I saw it. I found it on eBay, or no, I saw it in a store, and later on found it also on eBay. So yeah, it's perfect. For me, it's perfect. I don't carry it around anymore. Not that much. Only for sort of special occasions.
And you mentioned something a journalist wrote at some point. I read something else that was written about an exhibition of yours in a Dutch newspaper, NRC, in which they referred to you as a warm voyeur.
Yeah.
And
I think,
I wondered just what you thought of that characterization, and also, obviously, as a spy camera, at least a so-called spy camera, there obviously is a natural overtone of voyeurism in, of taking images unnoticed.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's a voyeuristic quality in what you're doing in these pictures that you're taking?
Yeah, I think so, sort of. But I think it's also, is this what I said, it's like intimacy and distance. So the feeling between it. And of course, if you have a small camera, you're not so noticeable by your surroundings, so that makes it different for the pictures you make. But yeah, on the other hand, people ask me a lot about this Minox camera. Oh, you're a sort of spy, and that doesn't really fit me. I mean, I never use it as a spy to do sort of sneaky picture. It wasn't also for me a sort of point-and-shoot camera. I really looked at what I would do with it. So there is a sort of composition, a sort of feeling in there with an intention. So
Absolutely. Okay, we have just only a few minutes left, so I wanted to see if there are any questions in the audience for Mark.
Sorry. Oh. Sorry.
Otherwise, I have more questions. So, I guess the other question that I had for you was just, is this right? This is your first book that you've done.
Yeah.
And so, I'm wondering, are you making all kinds of other pictures as well, using different kinds of cameras? Or has this really been a kind of central part of the work that you've made over the years?
Well, it is a central part of my work, but it is also a sort of inspiration. So from the archive, I look at images which are fascinating me and starting a new project based on that stuff. And for now, I'm working on a new book. And this archive is to 2004, and that's the moment my son was born, and I couldn't travel so much. So I decided let's go and do stuff in the studio. And I started out with this camera in the studio, which is a little bit strange to do in the studio, but okay. And from there on, I worked first with this camera and worked with other cameras towards what I'm doing now.
So these were kind of sketches in a way, also for other work that
a
followed.
notebook. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all we have time for. So.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Yes. Thank you too.
And
for guiding me through, by the way. Yeah.
And Willem van Zoeterdaal doesn't have a booth on the at Paris Photo, but you will be able to see some prints of some of Mark's images on the stand of Gallery 51 from Antwerp. That is B32. And Mark is also going to be signing copies of the book on Saturday at 4:30 on the Gallery 51 booth. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.